Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Hi, folks, and welcome. It's great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network, America's anchorman, America's truth detector, and, of course, Doctor of Democracy. Right here from the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist Anti-Media Studies. Our telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Man, I'll tell you, I don't care what's happening in Houston. The Trump hate is ongoing. The anti-Trump thinking, actions, the protests, the apparent desire to rip this country apart and eventually destroy it goes on unabated. As does the meteorological disaster taking place in southeastern Texas. We'll start with the meteorological disaster in southeastern Texas first. We can get through that fairly, well, in a little less time than it'll take to document the Trump hate today and the actions of the worldwide and American left, led by the media, to continue to destroy Trump. It's gotten to the point now that there are major stories in major publications like the Daily Mail criticizing the shoes Melania Trump was wearing today when she boarded Air Force One for the trip down to Texas, that the media is saying that Trump shouldn't be making because it's too soon, and because the media says Trump doesn't have the ability to comfort people anyway, that Trump just repulses people. Trump repels people. Nobody wants to be hugged by Trump like everybody wanted to be hugged by Clinton and Obama. That Trump just can't pull this off. He'd be better off not going to Texas. He'd be better off just quitting and retiring and resigning and building Trump Tower in Moscow like he wanted to do in the first place, and just get out of this and let either Orrin Hatch take over or the Democrats or somebody, but anybody but Trump. I mean, that's pretty much a summary. Melania wore 5-inch stiletto heels under her jeans today as she boarded Air Force One. The drive-bys are saying she can't go walking in the flood with that. That's absolutely obscene. Who does she think she is? Now, does anybody think she's going to be wearing the 5-inch stilettos walking through flood? Does anybody think Melania is going to be walking through flood-ravaged areas of Houston? And interestingly enough, it's the UK Daily Mail, which used to be a reliably responsible place, that's leading the charge against Melania's stilettos today. And it was predictable. You saw that on TV. You just knew. I did anyway, that the media would not be able to ignore it. It looks like that, according to the National Weather Service and Texas state officials, that Hurricane Harvey will set a U.S. record for the most rainfall over a 3-day period and over a 20,000 square mile area. A 20,000 square mile area is about 140 miles by 140 miles. There are a couple of reservoirs in Houston, earthen dams and so forth, that have, I don't think they've been eclipsed. And they are in danger now of overflowing. And it is said that if that happens, that we may not know how to describe the destruction that will then happen. With those floodwaters released, those reservoir waters released on top of the flooding caused by the rain, and all of this drainage, it's amazing. If you look at a drainage map, river drainage map of Texas, southeastern Texas, you'll find that the drainage is all aiming at Houston, in the Houston area and the Galveston area, as it was naturally designed. The Trinity River goes up to Dallas. There are a bunch of them, and it's, if you follow the drainage patterns, which I looked at this morning, they all are designed to drain toward the Gulf in the direction of Houston and the southeast part of the state. So 3-day rainfall record, it's still raining. The hurricane left land, went back out to the Gulf, and is now coming back. And what Houston's getting is essentially the north and northwestern quadrant of the storm, with the winds basically from the east to the west, or basically the northeast to the southwest, and is just piling more and more rain on an area that obviously cannot accept it. Now, I said yesterday there are meteorological reasons for this. And what I meant by that is that this would be happening whether there was climate change caused by man going on or not. Now, one of the things I said yesterday turns out to be erroneous, and I will proudly and happily admit that my source for it was the drive-by media. I happened to be doing prep, getting ready for the program yesterday. I was cramming on Sunday. And I ran into a number of stories in the drive-bys that explained the strength, the late strengthening of Hurricane Harvey was because of the elevated sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, that they are 2 to 3 degrees above normal. And it turns out that that's irrelevant. I have a chart here that has been prepared by Dr. Roy Spencer at his website, drroyspencer.com. And it charts Texas major hurricane landfalls and western Gulf of Mexico sea surface temperatures. And what it shows is that major hurricanes have formed regardless what the sea surface temperature is in the Gulf of Mexico. The best way to say it is that hurricanes have no preference for whether sea surface temperatures are above or below normal. What Dr. Spencer has done here is charted the sea surface temperature from 1870 to the present, as best the records have, and then charted all of the hurricanes, major hurricane landfalls in the western Gulf of Mexico, and contrast that with sea surface temperature. And you see hurricanes where sea surface temperature is below normal. You see, we're talking major hurricane landfalls, not just tropical storms. And you see major hurricane formation when sea surface temperatures are above normal. So this chart and this data would tend to indicate that the sea surface temperatures are irrelevant to either the formation of a hurricane or the strength of a hurricane. Yet, in the drive-by media, and I guess throughout mainstream meteorology, sea surface temperatures are being said to be the primary culprit. What is known here is this is a record rainfall because this hurricane isn't moving. And there are meteorological reasons why the hurricane isn't moving. There are two high-pressure areas, one to the west of it, one to the east of it, that have it boxed in. It just can't go anywhere. And until one of those high-pressure area dissipates or moves on, the hurricane is going to remain where it is. Now, eventually that's expected to happen, and the hurricane is going to become a tropical depression and a post-tropical depression, and it's going to make tracks from where it is currently. Let's just call it over Houston for lack of better. That's the easiest way to describe where it is now. And the track has it running straight northeast. That means the high-pressure area that is to the east is going to move away or dissipate or what have you. But by the time that happens, this thing is going to become a post-tropical storm. It's still going to have a lot of rainfall. Where does the rainfall come from? This is another thing that people are asking. And the answers to these questions, I think, are important because everything in our country has been politicized. We cannot avoid that. Everything has been politicized. Sports is now politicized. The weather is politicized. Climate is politicized. Rainfall is politicized. Now, it's obvious who's done this. It's the American left. It's the Democrat Party, the media, because politics is their lifeblood. It's the source of their power. It is where they derive their reason for existence, energy, and all of that. And so they have literally politicized everything as a way of demonizing their opponents as well. So we have to deal with it according to that basis. Wish we didn't. Wish we could deal with this as strictly a meteorological occurrence. We can't, because they're lying to people about what's causing this. They're lying to people about why this is happening. Where does the water come from? Where does all of this rain come from? People have logical questions. Why this much rain over Houston? Why don't we get this kind of rain in a thunderstorm, say, over Missouri? Why don't we get this kind of rain in thunderstorms over South? We would if the systems were stationary and if the circumstances were such that they kept being fueled, which is what's happening here. Hurricane Harvey isn't moving appreciably, and the things that require it to stay strong are abundantly present. So it is, if it ran on gasoline, it's constantly at the station, and the pump is connected, and gasoline is being pumped into it. That's exactly how you need to look at this. What fuels the rain? What makes clouds? What makes clouds condense and fall as rain? Meteorological answers for this. We're back to sea surface temperatures. They happen to be 2 degrees above normal. That means the heat above the water is above normal. And what does heat do? It rises. You couple that with a low pressure area that is the hurricane sucking even more of that heat up than nature would normally take it via evaporation. And it just sucks it up and sucks it up and sucks it up and sucks up some water from the Gulf that as it evaporates, and eventually the cloud tops condense, and that's how you get rain, which is distilled water. Sea water as rain is perfectly drinkable. It's essentially distilled for all intents and purposes, and that's why this is happening. It doesn't have anything to do with man-made climate change that anybody can prove or establish. It has to do with specific meteorological circumstances. A large tropical cyclone, which is what official weather people call a hurricane. They call it a cyclone. And it's circulating. And as it circulates, it's sucking moisture off of the Gulf of Mexico over a large area. And it has stalled. And so while it continues its circulation, it continues to suck moisture from both the waters of the Gulf and the air just above it. All of that rises, gets to altitudes where clouds are formed. The clouds become heavy. The condensation becomes rain. Rainfall then is concentrated in the one spot the hurricane is because it isn't moving. If the hurricane were moving at 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, we would not be setting rainfall records. Now, the amount of water on Earth, in the air is constant. It just changes its location, its formation. Water exists as water vapor. It exists as seawater. It exists as rivers. It exists as tap water. But the amount of water on our planet is constant. We don't make new water. We don't lose water. We lose water in certain places. We have droughts. There are meteorological reasons for this that people can't explain. We can't predict it. We are just victims of it. It's Mother Nature, and we have no control over Mother Nature, and we never have had, as this is clearly indicating. The danger here is that there's no end in sight for it for the next 2 to 3 days. The rain continues, the hurricane basically stationary before it is forecast to move. But that's not till Wednesday or Thursday when it's supposed to move out of the area. And then those 2 reservoirs, which are beginning to tip over now. Records are broken with meteorological data. It happens through a random combination of circumstances, and this stuff happens with or without climate change. Don't forget there have been we just recently passed the record rainfall. So there was a point in time in the past in the southeastern Texas area where this amount of rain had fallen. We had a hurricane in 1900 in Galveston that killed 6,000 to 12,000 people. This is only the second hurricane in 12 years, major hurricane to hit land in the U.S. So these are random circumstances, and it's unpredictable. And these are just the kind of things that happen you have to deal with. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't comfort anybody. It doesn't make anybody more understanding and thus feel better about it. But it does help to know how these things happen and why. That there are reasons for all of this. There are scientific meteorological reasons that do not require the belief in myth, do not require any particular political orientation. But since everything is being politicized in America today, there is, I see it as a requirement to rebut as much of that as possible in an effort to preserve common sense, situational awareness, and reason. Let me take a brief time out, my friends, as we move on. The Trump hate is mounting. The Trump hate over Joe Arpaio and what the media is now simply lying about things that Trump is saying. I said they're not simply; they have been for a while, even ratcheting all of that up. So while this disaster is occurring 24/7 on TV, the left has not slacked off whatsoever in their effort to destroy Donald Trump and his presidency. Now, to the people in southeastern Texas, I doubt that matters very much right now. But it is happening, and it is ongoing, and we'll address that as well when we get back. And Air Force One just landed at Corpus Christi a couple of minutes ago. It's taxied in. They're waiting to roll the stairs up. People get off the plane. Corpus Christi was the close original site of landfall for Hurricane Harvey. But as you know, it has tracked east, and most of the rain bands have been far away. It's a sunny and bright day in Corpus Christi, sufficiently weather-wise for Air Force One to land. Yesterday on the program, we had a vice president with us. It was about this time. And I want you to listen to how his appearance here was characterized. Pretty much all over the media. We have, as our example, Fox News Channel from Neil Cavuto's show yesterday. He spoke with John Roberts, the White House correspondent. And here it is.
With so many people, it could be 500,000 or more, who will be in desperate need of FEMA assistance to rebuild their homes, will there be enough federal money? Today, speaking to Rush Limbaugh, the vice president insisted that there will be enough money. And speaking in the Oval Office just a short time ago, President Trump said he will go to Congress if necessary to get the money required to help all those folks out in Texas who need it so badly.
I just have to make the observation here, folks. I mean, the headline from the vice president's appearance on this program yesterday was what? That the federal spigot is open. Don't worry about it. We're going to have the money. That's how you show you care in the modern presidency. And that's why Pence made the point. He knew the media was going to be listening, and if they didn't hear that, all hell would have broken loose. We also spoke about insurance yesterday and the very convoluted nature of flood insurance and whether or not you have it and whether or not if you have it, it pays off. And it all depends. For example, if a tree falls on your house and breaks a window and you have flood insurance, then you might qualify if it breaks a window and water gets in. If a tree falls in your front yard and misses your house and you still get flooded because rain happened and you have flood insurance, you may not be paid off. It's convoluted as it can be. And this is going to just add to the nightmares for people, most of whom don't have rain or water flood insurance. Anyway, it's a federal program. Well, everybody's off Air Force One now, and just for the record, Melania Trump deplaned wearing tennis shoes. She was not wearing the 5-inch stilettos that she wore while boarding Air Force One. I can't believe this fashion stuff is relevant anyway, but the UK Daily Mail made a big deal out of her footwear. The governor of Texas showed up wheeling himself around on his wheelchair. Ben Carson got off the plane. Tom Price, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Carson HUD, Housing and Urban Development. There was a woman that got off the plane with Carson. I'm looking at this. No, it can't be. And it wasn't. I thought it was Hillary. And I thought, what in the world would she be doing? And it wasn't, but it was somebody wearing a blue windbreaker that at first glance, it had bob blonde hair. I said, oh, no, it can't. And it wasn't. I don't know who it was. Look. I couldn't tell she wore a pantsuit or not. I couldn't tell. She only saw the windbreaker and above. It was a blue windbreaker with an icon logo on it. SVP, Disaster Services Extraordinaire, whatever it said. I just got a glimpse at it. I'm probably going to be embarrassed when I find out when somebody tells me who it was or who it is. But I don't mean to be insulting anybody here. It just looked like Hillary Clinton at first glance. And I said, it can't be. By the way, I said, ladies and gentlemen, there are meteorological reasons that explain, that means scientific reasons that explain this weather anomaly in Houston. However, a University of Tampa professor, a person who teaches young skulls full of mush, suggested that you in Texas deserve this. You deserve this disaster. You deserve the flooding because of your support for Donald Trump in the 2016 election. Professor's name is Ken Story. He wrote, I don't believe in instant karma coming to get you, but this kind of feels like it for Texas. Hopefully, this will help them realize the GOP doesn't care about them. I'm telling you, folks, the left is unhinged and deranged. And I'm telling you, more and more of these people have literally lost their minds. They have been so self-poisoned with hatred that there is no recovery for these people possible. And they happen to be running things. These are the people that are demanding now that hate speech be prohibited. And when hate speech happens, these are the people telling themselves and everybody that violence is perfectly fine to deal with it. And they get to define hate speech. And hate speech is any speech that they disagree with. That's how hate speech is defined by people on the left. And this is an outgrowth of it. That kind of hate gives us this. I don't believe in instant karma, but this kind of feels like it for Texas. Hopefully, this will help them realize the GOP doesn't care about them. One of Story's followers responded. This was a tweet that this professor, put out, and one of his followers on Twitter responded by noting there are lots of good people in Texas. You may want to rethink this one. Wait a minute. Good people in Texas? Isn't that a kind of moral equivalency that got Trump in trouble in the first place after Charlottesville? Because it's no longer acceptable to say that there are good people on both sides. If the left decides that you're not good, you're not good. Period. There is no equivocation. And anybody comes along and says there is good is going to be tarred and feathered as participating in hate speech as well. So this follower of this idiot professor who says that Texans deserve the hurricane because they supported Trump and now they're going to learn how the GOP really doesn't care about them. His follower says, you know what, there's a lot of good people there. You might want to rethink it. And so the professor says, well, the good people there need to do more to stop the evil their state pushes. I'm only blaming those who support the GOP there, said the professor. Yeah, those who voted for Trump deserve it as well, Story answered. He later deleted the Twitter account, but a screenshot of his account confirms that he teaches sociology. It was Linda McMahon. That was Linda McMahon. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't want to tell you why I didn't think it was Linda McMahon. Small Business Administration, SBA, and that's what her windbreaker said. Well, okay, fine. It's Linda McMahon. That's the last person and I don't mean to insult Ms. McMahon by saying that she reminded me of Hillary. It was just the hair and the color, and I'm so used to seeing Hillary get down the stairs of airplanes, avoiding sniper fire in Bosnia, and with her husband. Look, folks, this professor in Tampa, this is a microcosm, but it confirms what we have been saying for months. The left doesn't just hate Trump. They hate anybody who supports Trump. And this guy, whatever he is, he's not teaching sociology. He's teaching pathology. I mean, can you imagine if there were a disaster like this in a predominantly Democrat state and somebody at Fox News said, well, you know what? They deserve it. They deserve it for voting Obama. Can you imagine what would happen to that person? End of career right there. And this guy, his followers, you might want to rethink that. There's some good people in Texas. And he acknowledged, oh, yeah, there's some good people in Texas, but not the ones that voted for Trump. Not the Republicans there. NBC has spent more time slamming Trump than reporting his assurances for Texas that he has made during public comments. Get this. Have you all heard of the controversy at USC? The USC mascot is the Trojans, which some might say is a condom. But actually a Trojan is a soldier. Well, the Trojan mascot at USC football games rides a white horse. Do you know the name of the white horse? Traditionally, whatever the horse is, there have been a bunch of horses over the many generations that the Trojan has ridden the horse. It's required a lot of horses. It's always a white horse. The horse's name is Traveler. Well, guess who else's horse was named Traveler? Take a wild guess. Robert E. Lee. Exactly right. Robert E. Lee's horse was named Traveler. The difference is that Robert E. Lee spelled Traveler with 2 L's, and USC spells Traveler with 1 L. Guess what? Brent Musburger, formerly of CBS, then formerly of ABC, then formerly of ESPN, in an interview, Brent Musburger said he's very upset to learn this. I'm very upset. There's a move afoot to change the name of the horse from Traveler because Robert E. Lee's horse was named Traveler. Musburger said, you can't have that. He went on to say that he would withhold his Heisman vote from the USC star quarterback Sam Darnold if the school ended up changing Traveler's name, even though Darnold is his early Heisman favorite. He said, if they mess around with my horse, I'm off him. I've got to vote. I will not vote for Darnold if they change the name of the horse. So actually, Musburger is standing up, going against the tide, claiming it would be silly to change the name of the horse simply because Robert E. Lee's horse was the same name. A profile in courage. How long is Musburger going to last here before his buddies in the leftist sports drive-bys get hold of him? When I first read this, the way the headlines read, it's very confusing that Musburger was upset that white supremacy had been going on at USC all this time and he didn't know about it. But which would have made perfect sense. I would have totally believed it. USC horse is white like Robert E. Lee's horse was. The horses' names are not spelled the same. Robert E. Lee had 2 L's in Traveler, and the USC Trojan horse has 1 L. And again, Musburger, I'm very upset. There's a move afoot to change the name of the horse from Traveler because Robert E. Lee's horse was named. You can't do that. You can't have that. So how will the sports world decide to punish Brent Musburger for his racism? We'll wait and see. Salon.com. I saw the tweet. Hang on a minute, folks. I have to deal with one of my screen servers here. There we go. I saw the tweet last night. Salon.com. I predicted this the week before I went on vacation. I said, where do these national anthem protests naturally end up? You get rid of the anthem. That's the way to solve the problem. That's what the left will say. I said you get rid of the anthem. The anthem is the problem. The anthem and the flag are why Kaepernick's protesting, not because Kaepernick's a bad guy, and this country's not worth the anthem, and this country's not worth the flag. And Salat.com tweeted last night that the United States has a neo-Confederate national anthem. Jefferson Morley is the writer at Salon, contended the U.S. adopted the Star-Spangled Banner as its national anthem due to an ascendant neo-Confederate spirit during the decades after the Civil War. He then played up that observing Memorial Day and singing the Star-Spangled Banner are uncontroversial patriotic gestures, yet there's no disputing that neo-Confederates developed these rituals. In other words, white racists are responsible for the national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the flag, and because white racists, neo-Confederates. By the way, for those of you not familiar with political lingo, neo-Confederate would simply mean sort of like the self-styled Confederates at the end of the Civil War and for years going forward, new Confederates modifying themselves in admiration of the Confederacy. So it's white supremacists who wrote the national anthem, Francis Scott Key, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the flag. And for that reason, we need to get rid of both. And while it's funny, and while it's off the wall, and while it's crazy, folks, these people are serious. And whenever anybody on the left comes up with one of these cockamamie ideas, the rest of them go right along with it, and it's going to be mainstream media before long. You're going to see panel discussions on TV debating whether or not the Star-Spangled Banner is inspired by slavery. And was the American flag inspired by people who were neo-Confederates? You're going to see it debated. And, of course, you're going to have people on CNN, oh, yes, it's about time we're getting to the truth of this. The effort to not just transform, the effort to finally destroy this country as founded is in full swing and is not taking any time off because of this hurricane. So I checked the email during the break. Some people think I'm making this Star-Spangled Banner stuff up. And the reason they think so, Rush, the Star-Spangled Banner was written in 1812. That's so much before the Civil War that there's no way Francis Scott Key could have been a racist. And the point here in Salon is not that the Star-Spangled Banner was written after or during the Civil War. It's when it was adopted as the national anthem. Again, here, the Salon.com writer is a guy named Jefferson Morley. I wonder if he's going to change his name. You know, Thomas Jefferson, slave owner, and here's this guy at Salon carrying a similar name, Jefferson. It's got to be embarrassing, wouldn't you think? Jefferson Morley. Anyway, he wrote a book about Francis Scott Key. He emphasized the Star-Spangled Banner has lyrics that deride black people who took up arms to gain their freedom in the War of 1812, and that it became a point of pride for Southerners. However, there is a debate among historians over the intentions of the lyrics in question, which show up the rarely sung third stanza. And they point out that Francis Scott Key was a slave owner, and that fact alone should disqualify anything he wrote from being adopted as the national anthem. Folks, they are serious about this. I also, last night, or was it, I guess it was the night, but whenever the Berkeley rally was, the Antifa people were chanting at the Berkeley rally where they were protesting nothing. They set it up as a protest against a bunch of neo-Nazis and right-wingers, and none of them showed up. This was simply a protest, and there was violence, and there was hatred, and there were very many events where heads got bashed, and it was the left that did this. And all I could think of was Gary Cohn, Trump's economic advisor, who disagreed with Trump on his characterization as good people on both sides. He said, you can't draw a comparison between people who are standing up for freedom and equality versus these neo-Nazis. And Antifa is not about freedom or equality. No leftist bunch of people is. These are a bunch of Linskyites when you get right down to it. They're not about freedom and they're not about liberty and they aren't about equality whatsoever. These people are the problem, and the people like Gary Cohn don't see it is what is the problem here. And these Antifa people were chanting, no Trump, no wall, no USA at all. These are the people that the media is defending as they attack Trump. You know, Trump's out there saying, hey, that side on the left, they had some bad actors in there, too. There's a bunch of it to go around, and the media would have had a cow. And just like Gary Cohn, Trump's economic advisor, said, no, those are people standing up for equality and freedom, and you can't draw a distinction. You cannot say that the people on the right of the totally misses the point. It's the people on the left who are using violence to deny equality, specifically equality and specifically freedom. And their chant, no Trump, no wall, no USA at all. Now, you can say, Russia, it's a small band of people. It's just typical left-wingers protesting. They've been around since the 60s. It isn't going to matter. Don't look at it that way. What was happening in the 60s is largely what's gone wrong with our country today. Those people now are in positions of power and have been for too long. Here's a little bit of the mob, the Antifa mob, Sunday in Berkeley.
No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all.
That's this peaceful, loving bunch of people, equality and fairness. Yeah, right here. I'm just looking for something. Don't sweat it. Back at it we are. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network, the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist Anti-Media Studies. Telephone number 800-282-2882. If you want to appear, we'll get the phone calls in this hour. And the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Houston mayor vows to personally defend illegal immigrants seeking aid after Harvey. No surprise there. I'm just looking at my stack here from yesterday because I need to get something out of it very quickly. Trump is supposedly livid with Gary Cohn, who is the Democrat Goldman Sachs economic advisor in Trump's administration, and Tillerson is the former Exxon CEO and now Secretary of State. And let me check the holdover audio sound bites just to make, do we have Tillerson? We don't. Tillerson was on Fox News Sunday over the weekend and essentially said that he speaks for himself and the administration says one thing on race relations and Trump speaks for himself. You have that. Okay, good. It's number 11. Let's get to that. Let me see if there's something in front of it that I need to air first. It's number 12, I think is what I have here. And then Cohn is a separate. Here, grab 12. This is Fox News Sunday. This is Chris Wallace. And his question is, a UN committee criticized the Trump administration for its failure to unequivocally condemn the racist events and demonstrations in Charlottesville. When the president gets into this kind of controversy, he does, and a UN committee responds the way it does, it seems to say that they begin to doubt whether we are living our American values. And this is what Tillerson, the Secretary of State, responded with.
I don't believe anyone doubts the American people's values or the commitment of the American government or the government's agencies to advancing those values and defending those values.
And the president's values?
And the president speaks for himself, Chris.
Whoa, is right. That there's no other way to interpret this. Now there are people trying to put a smile on this. by saying, no, you're misunderstanding what Tillerson was saying. Tillerson was saying the president speaks for himself on these issues, not that he speaks differently. But I don't look. Here's what's happened in a nutshell. Trump does his 3 different statements on Charlottesville. The first statement, the media had a cow. They didn't particularly like it. So Trump went out and then in the second statement specifically condemned neo-Nazis, the KKK, and white supremacists, because that's what everybody in the media and his administration was demanding that he do, because he had screwed up in the first one by not signaling them out as the lone bad guys. Trump never thought they were the lone bad guys. Trump knows that the leftist protesters are the agitators and the bad guys, and there are just as many creeps in that group, if not more, as there are over here in these extreme so-called... I think all these groups are leftist, but that's another discussion. I don't believe that the KKK and the Nazis... The KKK is a bunch of Democrats when they were founded. They're not a bunch of right-wingers, and neither are the neo-Nazis and these white supremacists. These people are people that want the federal government to be big as hell to take care of their enemies for them. That's exactly what leftism and liberalism is. But these people get tagged over here on the right by the media and by the Democrats. And Trump, in his second press conference, then officially condemned and called out by name the KKK, the white supremacists, and, of course, the Klan, the neo-Nazis. Then the media said, not good enough. Not good enough. You don't really mean it because you only did it because we egged you on. You didn't do it from your heart. You don't mean it. That ticked Trump off even more. So the next day he goes out and he just unloads on what he really thinks, that there are bad actors on both sides and that there are good people on both sides. And that just sent everybody into an absolute tizzy, apparently including Gary Cohn and Tillerson. Now, Gary Cohn, the economic guy, actually said that it is a mistake to equate citizens standing up for equality and fairness with these neo-Nazis and right-wingers. And I looked at that and I about came out of my gourd because that's not who these people are. And if people in our administration do not have a proper understanding of who these leftists are, then where are we? Trump does. He knows exactly who they are, but he's now got 2 people in his administration undercutting him. Now, I need to find something out. Now, I raised a question yesterday, and I'm going to ask it again in relation to these 2 guys. And when I raise this question, I've already seen people have responded to it elsewhere in the media. The CEOs of Apple and J.P. Morgan Chase both announced massive $1 million donations to the Southern Poverty Law Center sometime during the last week. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center is perhaps one of the biggest hate groups on the left. They tar and feather and slander right-wing groups and call them hate groups. They've got a map on their website. And wherever a right-wing group that says or does anything that the Southern Poverty Law Center is a bunch of leftist freaks, all you have to do is disagree with them and you are called a hater. For example, if they support gay marriage and LGBT and all these other things and you happen to disagree with it, you are the hater. You hate. You are a hate-filled person that is bordering on the use of violence. And that's how they characterize these groups. And it led to a deranged leftist walking into the office of the Family Research Council and actually shooting at somebody. It's what contributes to this deranged guy shooting up Republicans at a baseball practice in Virginia. The Southern Poverty Law Center and other left-wing groups actually inspired their dope members to violence while claiming that the right-wing groups that they're identifying, and they point them out on a map, they identify where these groups' headquarters are on a map, And their deranged supporters end up there protesting and so forth. Now, my question yesterday was, do the CEOs of Apple and J.P. Morgan not know this? And it was a legitimate question because in the mainstream media, the Southern Poverty Law Center is treated as the Vatican. The Southern Poverty Law Center is treated as one of the most worthwhile, fair, enduring organizations devoted to equality and fairness. And that's the last thing they're devoted to. These are the people that want to shut you up if you say something they disagree with. You don't even have to be saying it about them. Basically, all you have to do is be a prominent conservative or run a prominent conservative 501c3 fundraising organization. If your conservative group raises money, then the Southern Poverty Law Center is out to destroy you. So I asked the question, do these CEOs not know this? And it was a legitimate question because if all they do, if their total source of information happens to be CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and maybe the Washington Post, it is entirely possible they don't know the truth about the Southern Poverty Law Center, just like they don't know the truth about me, just like they don't know the truth about conservatism because they never expose themselves to it, because they've already been convinced it's just a bunch of kooks and fringe and it's abnormal and they are normal and so they don't need to pay any attention. But these CEOs are in the business of selling products to everybody. And so when they go public with their $1 million donations to the Southern Poverty Law Center and then say that they will match their employees' donations up to a certain amount to this group, you think every employee at Apple or J.P. Morgan happens to agree with the CEOs? With the number of people we're talking about, it simply can't be. There cannot be universal agreement. I guarantee you the people that don't agree with the CEOs at these companies probably have to stay pretty much hidden, have to keep them thoughts pretty much to themselves if they know what's good for them. But the same token here, does Gary Cohn, who is the top-ranking economic advisor to Trump White House, does he really not know what Antifa is? Does he really not know that they are a group that is devoted to violence, that they are a hate group, that they are not devoted to equality and liberty and fairness? They are devoted to exactly the opposite. Does he not know it? It's a legitimate question. I think it's entirely possible that a left-wing Democrat would not know what the Southern Poverty Law Center is. The other side of it is that they do know. They know exactly what it is, and they support it anyway, and they know exactly what Antifa is, and they support it anyway while lying about who they are. Which is easier to believe here? I must tell you, folks, before you start cackling at me, one of the many things that I have learned over the course of my career is how genuinely ignorant and in some cases stupid people in our media are. And when I say ignorant, I really mean they are closed off. They do not expose themselves to anything other than what they already believe. You know what they say about us? They say that we do nothing but confirm our biases. That's why we watch Fox News. We're not interested in the old BS. We watch all of their crap. We read every bit of idiocy they say. They do not consult us. Their biases and their prejudices prevent them. I know liberalism better than they do. I know what they're thinking before they're thinking. I know what they're going to do before they do it because I have taken the time to study them and understand them, what makes them tick, why they think the way they are. They're the ones closed-minded. They're the ones who are ignorant. They're the ones who are not curious. They're the ones who live in this dream world where we are Satan incarnate. My question is that what we've got in the White House? We have in the White House an economic advisor who really doesn't know that Antifa is not devoted to equality and fairness. And is that why he decides to diss the president and go out and suggest the president is siding with people? Let me put it a better way. He went out and basically implied the president is opposed to citizens standing up for equality and fairness. And then Tillerson, well, we in the administration here at the State Department, the U.S. government, yeah, right, we advance those values, we defend those values, commitment to those values. What about the president? Well, president speaks for himself, Chris. Oh, really? You cannot include the president here. Gary Cohn is Trump's National Economic Council director. And he said what he said in an interview with the Financial Times, and he was openly critical of Trump's comments about the violence in Charlottesville. He said citizens standing up for equality and freedom can never be equated with white supremacist neo-Nazis and the KKK. But that Trump didn't. Trump did not equate the two sets of people. He said that more than one side was responsible for the blame for the violence, which is true. He didn't fall for the usual tack of blaming only one side, which is what the media demanded, and apparently what Gary Cohn did. Gary Cohn, yeah, the right-wingers, they're the problem, the supremacists, the neo-Nazis, the KKK. And there's no equivocation between them and citizens standing up for equality and freedom. Don't forget, we had this New York Times reporter who was out there at Charlottesville when this happened, who was witnessing the violence on the left and wrote about it and then had her tweets canceled or deleted by the New York Times because it was so against protocol. What was her name? Nettleblock. Little company. She's a prominent reporter at the Times who was there and tweeting what had happened. So my question, does Cohn really not know? Did the CEOs of Apple and J.P. Morgan really not know about the Southern Poverty Law Center? Or do they know and simply hate right-wingers so much that they will support the Southern Poverty Law Center because they're nothing more than dyed-in-the-wool leftist activists themselves? What do you think? I side on the fact they don't know. I think these leftists are some of the most fooled, misguided, misdirected people, and they fall for anything that they're told is compassionate or sustainable or devoted to equality. And in the areas that they would read or the TV networks they would watch, you will not ever find one critical word of the Southern Poverty Law Center. In fact, you'll find nothing but devotion. And the people at that stupid thing, what did that name into a Southern Poverty Law Center? These people hate the South. They are not in poverty, and they don't do anything about poverty. And the law is something that gets in their way. That their name is a distraction. Anyway, I gotta take a break. I just saw the clock. Hang on, folks. We'll be back. Don't go away. Welcome back. Il Rushbone at Cutting Edge. It was Cheryl Gay Stolberg of the New York Times who had those two tweets that recorded and referenced the anti-hate or the pro-hate violence by the left, by Antifa. She tweeted two things documenting the fact that she saw violence on both sides. She saw hate on both sides. Cheryl Gay Stolberg. And the New York Times went in there and essentially deleted her tweets, and she had to revise what she had said. Guess Gary Cohn missed that. Guess Gary Cohn missed the New York Times reported there was violence and hate-filled behavior on the part of citizens standing up for equality and fairness. Let me grab a call quickly. We haven't gone there yet. Mike in Brooksville, Florida. I'm glad you waited. I really appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Mega Digos to you, Rush.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the front lines every day, bringing honesty and truth. You're a patriot.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that.
I wanted to bring, I think it was yesterday, you mentioned the catastrophe of Galveston, talking about the global warming ruse that the left is pushing and has been pushing for years. Right second to that was the Okeechobee hurricane, 1928, September 6th. Back then it said they killed 3,400 people. That was in 1928. How many millions of vehicles do we not have on the road back then?
Well, that raises another question. How much concrete had not been poured? How many streets had not been built? In other words, how much more soil was there to soak up torrential rains as opposed to what Houston is now? This is not a rant against development. Don't misunderstand. It is we change the environment. We adapt. There are many places in this country that if without rerouting rivers and without air conditioning, human life doesn't make any sense. It's habitable, but you wouldn't do it. And one of those areas happens to be Southern California. If it weren't for the Colorado River and the aquifers in the northern part of the state and the runoff of the Sierra Mountain Range, nobody in their right mind would build cities in Southern California desert. But we did. We adapt. Same thing in Houston. Because we have the ability to. But back in the 1900 hurricane that in Galveston, between 6,000 and 12,000 people died. Now, also, we didn't have EMS back then like we have today. We didn't have medical services, hospitals. So it's comparing eras is a risky thing. But it still is a good point. This point of comparison that can be made. I have to take a break here, folks. I appreciate the call, Mike. We'll be back here. We'll continue in mere moments. No, look, here's the reason I'm asking about Gary Cohn. Gary Cohn is not just some random economist here. He's in the White House. He is the National Economic Council Director. He has Trump's ear on matters of economics. My point is this. If he is mistaken, if he doesn't know, if he's not able to see the threat that these Antifa and related groups pose to liberty and freedom, if he's not able to see that, that worries me tremendously. We don't need somebody in this administration. Put him in the Obama administration, but not this one. We don't need somebody who doesn't see the threat of leftist violence. Somebody who looks at a bunch of leftists and automatically concludes that they are devoted to equality and fairness. You know, if this guy doesn't see who these people are, I'm sorry, that's a problem. And if the guy is then going to separate himself from the president and put himself on a pedestal of superiority based on his own ignorance, in order to distance himself from the president, for what reason would he be doing that? Media fawning? Trump doesn't need people like this, if you ask me. Trump needs people that see the world as he sees it. That's the reason why you win. That's why you put together an administration. And to me, it's problematic. If there's going to be somebody in there that close who can look at these events and only see half of what's happening and be wrong about the other. Well, be wrong on both sides. Sorry, it presents problems for me. As a citizen, not as a radio host, as a citizen. Now, supposedly, Trump is livid with both these guys, Cohn and Tillerson. But I'll tell you what this shows. Once again, we have this event in Charlottesville, which was totally mischaracterized, blatantly so, by the media, and the gutless wonders that refuse to take issue with it prevail and run the day, rule the day here. It just goes to show you what everybody's up against. These guys, it could well be that Cohn and Tillerson are just choosing the path of least resistance. Maybe I don't want to get in a scrap with the media. Look what they're doing to Trump. I'd rather be on their good side. You know, like the congressional Republicans and senatorial Republicans have decided to do. But I'm just, folks, there's nothing about fairness or equality or liberty when we're talking about these leftist protesters. They're devoted to the exact opposite. These are the people who are defining hate speech as anything they disagree with. These are the people who are trying to maintain the U.S. Constitution prohibits hate speech. These are the people using their power, combined with that of the media, to get as much force behind the notion that if you're not one of them, you don't have a right to say anything, and if you do, you have there is the obligation to rough you up, to intimidate you, or what have you. There's nothing about this group that is devoted to equality, and there's certainly nothing about freedom that they're devoted to, except for their own. It's like the Southern Poverty Law Center. The only poverty they've ever solved is their own, with your money. By the way, you want to hear something funny? Dr. Roy Spencer. I often refer, he's the chief climatologist at the University of Alabama at Huntsville. And I have referred to him off and on as our official climatologist because he is one of the accredited sources I seek and cite. And so the media, constantly focused on this program, looking for any evidence that we might get something wrong, have decided to investigate Dr. Spencer. And not for the first time. So there were a bunch of media hits on the way I have been covering the story of Hurricane Harvey, and they list Dr. Spencer as artificial climatologist instead of official climatologist. Now, I'm saying, how did this happen? I consulted Dr. Spencer, and Dr. Spencer is very gracious, and he thinks that it was just autocorrect at the media that got screwed up. But there's no way I've ever called him our artificial climatologist. Dr. Spencer would be typical of those who'd be targeted. Anyway, the people that he works with saw this, and they went to, what is this, Dr. Spencer? You're not artificial about you. Why are these people saying this about you? So he had to explain that he's added this to his blog now. The only thing you can do is laugh at this kind of stuff. Artificial climatologist. Now, that's what they thought they heard me say instead of official. Here's the president, grab soundbite 23, Trump in Corpus Christi at Fire Station 5 during a briefing about the rescue and recovery effort.
It's a real team, and we want to do it better than ever before. We want to be looked at in 5 years and 10 years from now as this is the way to do it. This was of epic proportion. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. And I just want to say that working with the governor and his entire team has been an honor for us. So, Governor, again, thank you very much. And we won't say congratulations. We don't want to do that. We don't want to congratulate. We'll congratulate each other when it's all finished.
So he says everybody's doing a heck of a job, but it's a real team. They want to do it better than ever before. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I want to look back and say the way Trump did it is the way to do it from now on. Well, you know how that's going to be received. These people are losing their minds right in front of our faces, folks. The media losing their minds right in front of our faces. I have examples of it here in the audio soundbites, but I got to get back to the phones because people have been waiting here for 2 days on some instances. This is Mark in Columbus, Ohio. Great to have you. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well, Mr. Limbaugh. How are you?
Fine, dandy.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a little thought here. I want to see if you want to make a prediction for me. Right now, the name Adolf is completely unacceptable. To have anyone in this country, or anyone in the world for that matter, be named Adolf after the 1940s is unacceptable for obvious reasons, and I agree with that. We are now witnessing the PR wizards at ESPN have deemed Robert Lee to be an insensitive name, could trigger some negative emotions in people. Where does this line stop, and do you think we could get to a point where the name Robert itself is written? My middle name is Robert. My dad's name is Robert. One of my best friends is named Robert. I just wonder where the line stops. And, thanks for taking my call, Mr. Limbaugh. Really
more than... Where does it stop? Yeah, it's a valid question. Where does it stop with the left? It doesn't. That's the whole point. It doesn't stop, folks. They are never satisfied. If you'll notice, they are never happy. They are never content. No matter what they get, no matter how many concessions are made to them, their rage and anger is ongoing. If they succeeded in overthrowing the country, if they succeeded in overthrowing the Constitution, they would not be happy. That would not make them happy because they're incapable of it. Their existence requires rage. Their existence requires demons, enemies. Their existence, these are people who may, in fact, be happy, angry, in the sense that if they're not mad at something or somebody, if they're not constantly enraged, then something is wrong. So where does it stop with names? Depends on a lot of things, geography, events that happen. I don't look at this USC business. The USC mascot, the Trojan, not the soldier, not the condom, has been riding a white horse on the field at USC games for how many decades? Now they learn that Robert E. Lee's horse, also white, was named Traveler. And so now the people at USC are dangerously angry, and they're embarrassed, and they're thinking they've got to do something. They can't. They've got to change the name. Even though the Traveler is spelled different ways, Robert E. Lee put 2 L's in the name of his Traveler. And if you're going to get upset about this, if you're going to literally have your life turned upside down, if you're going to start feeling guilty over the fact that you have unknowingly, as a USC student or member of the faculty or booster or alumni, if you're going to get all bothered by the fact that the name of your mascot horse is close to that of Robert E., how much free time must you have in your life to waste time getting mad over something that means nothing? But that's essentially who these people are. And you cannot, my point is, you can't placate them. You can't call them devoted to freedom and equality and make them like you. You cannot support their cause and reduce their anger or reduce their violence. It's a way of life. And by the way, none of them were born this way. All of this is the product of a combination of the way they were raised and however they have been educated and however they continue to be informed. This didn't just happen. I think this is, in many cases, liberalism totally out of control now. In fact, if I had to guess, there are some Democrat leftists. I don't know who, I wouldn't be able to name them, but I think there are a few of them, and they're probably growing in number, who are just as concerned about this mob as anybody else is. They're concerned about it because they know it's going to reflect on them. But they don't dare distance themselves from the mob because then the mob is going to come after them. So they are in the middle of a huge dilemma because they're smart enough to know that this mob is going to really damage the Democrat Party. They know that this mob is not going to be winning elections anytime soon. But yet they don't distance themselves, but they're very much worried about this. Now, there are other Democrats who are cheering it on. Don't misunderstand. I was saying there's some here who are aware of the problem that's been created. I mean, when your party has existed for all of these years to create nothing but dependence, and when you have preached to them that every political opponent is the equivalent of the devil that wants to starve them, like and their kids, or that wants to send them wherever. I mean, the things the Democrats have been saying about Republicans, the things the media has been saying about Republicans and conservatives all of my life and then some, it's coming home to roost. Got to take a break. Back in just a second. Be patient. Yeah, grab somebody number, let's see here, number 4. No, grab number 5. I will never forget this. This is Peter Jennings. I had an ongoing back and forth battle with Peter Jennings, who was the anchor of ABC's World News Tonight. Peter Jennings even came by when we were located in New York City. Peter came by one day, just had to find out who this guy is. Me. So he came by under pretext of being interviewed by somebody else on the station and stopped in. And when his entourage showed up, he was the ABC World News Tonight anchor, for those of you who don't know, and he passed away from lung cancer shortly after 9/11. And he had been the anchor of World News Tonight for years. Before that, he was the foreign correspondent, had a trench coat down pat. I mean, he was the prototype foreign correspondent news anchor. And he was as liberal and social issue conscious, social justice warrior as anybody in the news business has ever been. And one day, his entourage came by with been interviewed at WABC, and his guy walks in and said, "He's here." Of course, I had not seen him come in. I didn't know who is here. It was just like everybody must have known that Peter Jennings was coming, but I didn't know. So his guy walks in, his Keith Schiller, you know, Trump's Keith Schiller, that it was Peter Jennings' Keith Schiller. He is here. Who? Jennings. Peter Jennings. Oh, really? Cool. So he came in and we had a nice chat, and I was very complimentary, and he was somewhat taken aback by it. Acted extremely humble and almost embarrassed. It was kind of cute. But he's the guy that after the Republicans won the House in the 1994 election said that the American people had had a temper tantrum, and what they did really didn't make any sense, just a bunch of children. And then, after 9/11, ABC News coverage of the post, the immediate days after, he said this about President George W. Bush.
The president and his response to this is also part of the psychological package, because the country looks to the president on occasions like this to be reassuring to the nation. Some presidents do it well, and some presidents don't.
Everybody knew he was talking about Clinton doing it well and Bush, this dumb, deranged hick cowboy, being incapable of. Okay? So now we move to Todd Gilman, who is the Washington bureau chief of the Dallas Morning News on CNN this morning.
This is something that we expect our presidents to do, to be a consoler in chief in times of crisis. It's not something we've seen a lot from Donald Trump, but it is part of the job description. I think back to a number of other hurricanes that I've covered over the years. I've seen former presidents do this. Some are better at it than others. It'll be interesting to see just how warm and how consoling Trump is. I remember being in Galveston after Hurricane Ike and seeing President Bush 43 holding hands with the mayor and hugging her, and it was very warm and genuine. Hard to imagine Donald Trump doing that kind of gesture.
Whoa! George W. Bush was good at it. Unlike what Peter Jennings said, George W. Bush was good at it. Warm, genuine, hugging. Hard to imagine Trump. These people can't, when they see Trump walking up to somebody to want to hug them, they think the person would run away because they think all they'll see is the Trump of the NBC grab the whatever video. Well, because they're drawing tough today, you know. Now they're asking me why I've gone through so many cigars today. I haven't smoked a lot of cigars. I've tried a lot. Like I've had to light up 4 today, and only one of them actually had a decent draw, or I wouldn't get a hernia trying to smoke the thing. It just happens some days. It just happens. Why is everybody so curious about what I do anyway? We'll take a break here, folks. We'll be back. We'll continue after this. Greetings, welcome back. Great to have you, Rush Limbaugh, here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, the fastest 3 hours in media. By the way, folks, I just got a note from our artificial climatologist, Dr. Roy Spencer. if he is our official climatologist, and the media has been, of course, they follow the show, looking for ways to pick it apart. So whenever I cite a scientific authority here, they immediately attempt to find out who this scientific authority is to see if they can do any damage. And as such, they have come up with the name artificial climatologist. I talked to Dr. Spencer about it. He thinks it's not done on purpose. He thinks it's an autocorrect error that has gotten cemented in the drive-by media's templates. Whatever. The point is that Dr. Spencer here has created, he's written a book. It's an e-book. He whipped it up in 2 weeks. He's already had to issue the second edition to fix some typos several days ago. He's added some new information. It's called An Inconvenient Deception, How Al Gore Distorts Climate Science and Energy Policy. And this little e-book that he just whipped up in 2 weeks' time is running number one in 3 different categories. In contrast, Gore's book is not doing well. The movie of Gore's book, An Inconvenient Sequel, has bombed at the box office. Gore's book is number 23,800 on Kindle, and Dr. Spencer's book is number one in 3 different categories. And, of course, everybody's wondering, where is Gore on Hurricane Harvey? I mean, wouldn't this be made to order for Al Gore? He could get on any TV network he wanted, and he could proselytize and propagandize however he wanted. I mean, if there's ever been an opportunity for Al Gore and the global warming hoaxers to come forward and say, see what we've been telling you, where are they? They'll show up, folks. Do not think they're hiding. They will pick their moment. Now, Spencer's title, An Inconvenient Deception, How Al Gore Distorts Climate Science and Energy. Just look for it on Amazon or Whole Foods. Didn't Amazon buy Whole Foods? Oh, speaking of that, have you heard what Amazon's... Whole Foods, what's the nickname for Whole Foods? Whole Paycheck? Well, Amazon's going in there, and they are just slashing prices. Bezos, you know this Bezos guy? I think Bezos wants to own everything. He owns books, he owns retail, and he's going to own food. When you own food, you own it all, because that's not an optional purchase. People have to eat, except Hollywood starlets. Outside of them, everybody has to eat. And going in there, lowering prices at Whole Foods, what a brilliant PR move. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the reaction to President Trump. I was watching him. We just played the audio soundbite of his appearance down in Corpus Christi. And, of course, it's automatic that anybody watching in the media or any of the leftists out there who'd be watching literally hate this guy. And they have talked themselves into, maybe they haven't talked, they just do. They hate everything about, they hate the way he dresses. They hate his hat. They hate the way he talks. They literally hate it. I mean, it's not that they dislike it or are irritated. They literally hate it. And I think that tells us much more about them than it does about Trump. The reasons that Trump is hated are because, well, they're numerous, and I've been through them. He is so against type. He is just the exact opposite of what these people expect a leader of the country to be, because they expect the leader of the country to come from their pool, from their bailiwick, somebody like them, somebody who's liberal, somebody who's all of that, somebody who speaks in the proper coded ways, somebody who is He's got all the proper sensitivities, and this guy, Donald Trump, compared to these people, is just a regular guy. And I think what we're seeing here in this hatred for Trump, I mean, there's a lot that embodies the hate. I mean, the fact that he won, the fact that he outsmarted them, the fact that he made a fool out of Hillary Clinton, all these things. But how he did it is just what's driven them nuts. Donald Trump is an average, ordinary guy. He's a real guy. People all over this country recognize Donald Trump as one of them, as a real guy. It's the people inside the Washington establishment who, to us, are the phonies. And who are the ones who affectate things and try to act smarter than they are and act aloof and act above us and act as though they're our betters. Trump doesn't do any of that. And he doesn't kowtow to them. So their hatred just is constantly amplified and magnified, and it geometrically progresses. And I really think these people are on the verge of losing a degree of their sanity, because in their world, they should have destroyed him by now. In their world, they should have taken Trump out. In their world, he shouldn't have been elected. In their world, he should have been out after his opening statement. And then in their world, he should have been out after what he said about McCain. Then in their world, he should have been out after the NBC Access Hollywood video. And then after he mistreated Hillary during the debates, and that's the latest. The fact that he doesn't just survive these things, that he triumphs. And then he should have been gone because of the Russia investigation. All of that innuendo, all of that stuff in the news should have destroyed him. It should have made him want to quit. They have fired everything they've got, and he still shows up every day and then has the audacity to point fingers of blame at them and tell them exactly who they are, i.e. fake news. And it's just driving them crazy. And I think the same thing happened to his little appearance today at the fire station in Corpus Christi. The fact that he's sitting there with all these public responders, first responders, that he's sitting there and talking, and they think it's an idiot speaking, and they can't relate in any way. And they're filled with this constant boiling resentment. And it's just worsening. I could give you a taste of it. This happened, the rally in Phoenix, last week when I was out. But there are 3 sound bites here that I want to get to. 2 of them I mentioned yesterday. This is a montage of the drive-by media losing their minds after Trump's rally in Phoenix last week.
Unhinged Donald Trump, untethered to the truth.
He's unhinged. It's embarrassing.
That was a president totally unhinged.
A man who's so clearly unbalanced and unfit.
This is an unhinged, unstable man.
We have seen Donald Trump unhinged, wild, unhinged.
I think that the president is unfit and is unhinged.
He's not just completely unfit. He might be psychotically demented and ill of the mind.
This guy is absolutely bat crap crazy.
The only defensible explanation is if he is not mentally well.
People saying that he's unfit to be president.
People can charge Trump with being unhinged.
This man is simply unfit for office, emotionally, mentally.
He is dangerous and truly unfit to be president.
This man is clearly not fit to be president.
The president was unhinged. He is unstable.
I really question his ability, his fitness to be in this office. And I also am beginning to wonder about his motivation. Maybe he is looking for a way out.
So once again, in this montage, and you know the names, Jake Tapper, Don Lemon, David Chalian, Joe Scarborough, Keith Boykin, Patty Solis Doyle, Nicole Wallace, Bakari Sellers, Maria Cardona, Rick Wilson, Anna Navarro, Jorge Ramos, Chris Matthews, Ron Reagan, Lloyd Doggett, John Garamendi, Paul Begala, James Clapper. Notice they all, 90% of them, unhinged, unfit. Do they hear themselves? Do they not realize there's not a speck of originality in any of them in what they're saying? What I saw the Trump rally. I watched it with my golf buddies. We're cheering it. Every other line we're going, yeah, right on, Trump. We knew when he came off teleprompter. We knew the 30 minutes I saw when he came off prompter and started attacking CNN. We all knew what was going to happen after that. That's all it took. That's what these people were going bonkers over, is that Trump deviated from the telepromptered speech and launched into CNN and explained how they have been lying about him and what he had said after Charlottesville. He just launched on them, and he said to them and to their face exactly who and what they are and how they've been behaving. And you just don't do that. Not in the establishment. Like Mitt Romney, like George W. Bush, you just sit there and take it. It's the game. It's the rules. You're a Republican in the establishment. You're going to get savaged. You sit there and take it like a good little Republican should. Trump doesn't take it. If anybody is unhinged right now, it's the Democrat Party, it's the American media, and all of these people that play like they're strategists on television. Now, James Clapper was the Director of National Security for Obama. James Clapper, over the months here since Trump was elected and then inaugurated, has been part of the cabal of people who have attempted to equate Trump and the Russians in collusion. Now, Clapper has been generic about it, and when asked specifically under oath in congressional testimony if he saw any evidence of the Russians tampering with the votes, he joined the chorus and said no. But outside of that, he has done everything he can, along with John Brennan, Obama's CIA director, and Comey, to further the aura, the illusion that Trump and Russia colluded. He was loyal to Obama, and it was, this is the guy that thinks the Iranians are totally trustworthy. And the only problem that we face in America is from right-wing terrorism, right-wing domestic terrorism. He's part of the cabal that when the fake Trump dossier was entered into the mix, that was really entered by John Brennan of the CIA, but Clapper would have been made party to it as the National Director of Intelligence. So he's all it. So CNN's hired the guy. CNN's hired this guy. Says former Obamaite as a commentator and as an intelligence analyst. And he was on the panel post-Trump rally. We have two sound bites. This is number one.
Yes, I do. I really question his ability, his fitness to be in this office. And I also am beginning to wonder about his motivation for it. Maybe he is looking for a way out. I do wonder as well about the people that attracted to this rally as others. You know, what are they thinking, or why am I so far off base? Because I don't understand the adulation.
So it wasn't just Trump that's nuts. It's you people in Phoenix and anywhere else who have attended a Trump rally, because this highly sophisticated Director of National Intelligence simply doesn't understand the adulation. Yet, Barack Hussein Obama can go to Minneapolis in the campaign of 2008 and he can say, "This is the night that the seas began to recede and the world began to heal." And the audience erupts and they start crying and they start singing songs of devotion to Obama. And we have little kids being required in the first and second grade to sing, "I love Obama, Obama's my guy, Obama is the president for life." And nobody has a problem with any of that. Nobody has a problem with a president of the United States claiming that his victory represents the beginning of the end of climate change, because now the sea levels are going to recede and the planet is going to heal. And yet all Trump did was talk about advance economic standards, standard of living, make America great again, condemn the media, point out they're lying, and this guy has a cow. I'm really very worried. I don't people that would show up in that adulation. I really think maybe he's just looking for a way out. And then there's got to get this one question. He was asked, you said you questioned Trump's fitness. Is President Trump a threat to national security, Director Clapper?
Well, he certainly could be. Again, having some understanding of the levers that a president can exercise, I worry about, frankly, the access to nuclear codes.
Access to the nuclear codes. He's worried about Trump with that. Meanwhile, he worked for a guy who saw to it that the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world was enabled to get nuclear weapons themselves. Hey, I'm sorry to be screechy here, folks, but this is just outrageous. This presumptuous ass, James Clapper. Well, I'm very worried about this man and his fitness for office, and I really don't understand the people who would show up for a rally like this. It's very, very concerning. And then the really problematic thing that worries me is that this man has the nuclear codes. Give me a break. You worked for a guy that was hell-bent on pandering to the enemies of the United States, enabling the Iranians, of all people, to ramp up their nuclear weapons arsenal on the basis that we don't have the right to tell any nation what they can and can't do. So you don't even subscribe to the idea, Mr. Clapper, that the United States has any presumptive moral authority based on our decency and goodness and our beacon of light existence for liberty and freedom. We're just one of the scrum of nations out there. That's what's been wrong. We've been led by a bunch of people that don't think there's anything special about America, who don't think there's anything exceptional about America, and who believe that what needs to happen is that America needs to be cut down to size. And too many of those people have positions of authority at universities, not just in the faculty, but in the presidency. Too many of these people work in the drive-by media. We are surrounded by people who, for whatever reason, think the United States is the problem in the world. We elect somebody who believes in the United States and wants to make it great again, and these people start having conniption fits and start questioning his fitness for office. Got it ass backwards, Director Clapper. By the way, this didn't take long. University of Tampa has fired visiting professor who suggested that Hurricane Harvey's destruction of Texas was an okay, good thing to get even with Republicans there who voted for Trump. The guy is gone. The University of Tampa. Snerdley, when did this story run? No. The original story about the professor. Were we this morning, we were the first to popularize it nationally. That's what I'm getting at here. All right. So this University of Sociology professor, Kenneth Story, tweeted, he's a visiting assistant professor, which basically means he empties the commodes and takes out the garbage and grades the tests at the University of Tampa. And he said that Texas deserved this storm as karma for voting for Trump. So it was one of the first things that we mentioned on the big program today, which was basically 2.5 hours ago, and the guy has been let go. University spokesman Eric Cardenas said in a statement that Story was fired after the screw weathered an outpouring of online outrage over the comments by the visiting sociology professor, Kenneth L. Story is his name. Make sure you make a note of that. Kenneth L. Story, S-T-O-R-E-Y. Karma, he said. Texas, Houston deserved to be hit by this natural disaster because they voted for Trump. The Tampa Bay Times reports that Story issued an apology, writing that he never meant to wish ill upon. Oh, of course. And it wasn't him who really, that wasn't me. You know how these apologies go. That wasn't me. I'm terribly sorry if anybody was offended by that. That's not who I am. That's just not what I do. Well, except it is who you are, and it is what you did. In a Facebook post, the university said it stands in solidarity with the people impacted by Hurricane Harvey. Officials said another sociology professor will take over the classes that are being currently taught by Kenneth L. Story. Storey. And here's something I bet you don't know that happened. Because it happened on CNN. It happened on CNN today. It happened on CNN's program called New Day. The Democrat governor of Louisiana happened to be on the program. His name is John Bel Edwards. And he said that President Trump and the federal government response to the impact of Hurricane Harvey on his state has been excellent. Edwards said, well, first of all, let me tell you, the federal government has been excellent. The president's called twice. He signed the declaration we requested within a few hours of our making the request on Sunday evening. Acting Secretary of Homeland Security Duke has been wonderful, and the FEMA Administrator Brock has been great as well. He said, what we need right now is really Mother Nature to cooperate more than anything else. We believe we're positioned well. I don't think you're going to see that reported. I don't think in whatever news that CNN shares today, they probably will not re-air that interview with Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards. Here is Joyce in Pittsburgh. I'm glad you called. It's great to hear from you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rush. How are you today?
Fine, thanks much.
Great. Steel City dittos to you. Okay, the one thing I wanted to say, and it's no matter what President Trump would have done, not gone, flown over, bust himself in to the hurricane, the left would not be happy. I mean, how they treated the President Bush when he flew over and was looking out the window, he was annihilated. So they don't want him to go. They do want him to go. Whatever he does is going to be wrong no matter what it is. And I wholeheartedly support the president without exception. But he's got to get rid of these folks that are countermanding him and, working with the deep state inside the White House. That's just got to stop. He's got so many loyal supporters out there that basically have no use for Congress, for the Senate, let alone Mr. McCain.
What do you make of Trump's approval numbers? I mean, there's two stories today that are in a great conflict. Consumer confidence, consumer economic confidence, even with the hurricane, is through the roof. It's at a highest level since 2000. It's a Bloomberg story. How do you jive that with Trump's approval numbers, which are not good?
Why should I trust any approval numbers on the president? They couldn't get the election polls right. I mean, why would I believe that? I mean,
one reason why you might is because the media has done nothing but smear and libel and slander for almost a year now. And it has to have some impact on the people that are polled. My overriding point is, like I was going to tell you, I think the people who are critical and yapping, I still think they're in the minority. I don't think that Antifa represents a majority of America.
No.
I don't think the Southern Poverty Law Center is anywhere close to representing a majority of America. The left isn't the majority of this country. And yet the media makes it look like they are. I would say Trump just needs to keep doing what he's doing as he is and try to ignore all of this stuff. But when, like you say, when his advisors and the members of his staff inside the White House are going to stand up and distance themselves from him, can't have that.
Well, he needs to get rid of them. But in the meantime, he needs to keep on doing what he's doing and do what got him elected, keep going out to the states, doing his rallies, getting with the people, because those are the folks that are loyal and will continue to support him. And it's going to be that support that's going to carry him through.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
If for just 2 months 3 months, either in the future or if it had happened in the past, if Republicans in Washington had worked with Trump on immigration, the wall, if they had worked with him on tax cuts, if they had just those two, can you imagine the difference if we actually had some legislative accomplishment and movement on cutting the corporate tax rate, the middle class tax rate, if we had had fair tax or tax reform, serious tax reform, and if there had been steady on just the simple immigration bill that was announced a couple weeks ago. The Republicans are the bottleneck here. The Democrats expected to oppose, but can you imagine what it would be if there had just been a month or two of cooperation?
Can you imagine what's going to happen in the midterms when the quiet majority, the Tea Party folks, the ones that are supporting the president, come out just like they did in 2010? And I still think that's going to happen, and I still think there's an overwhelming amount of support for this president.
Let me tell you something.
And his agenda.
If that happens, if what you're describing, if the Republicans take a beating in the midterms, let me tell you, the Republican Party hangs in the balance. I mean, if what you say, if they take that big a drubbing, then Trump's going to have to ask himself a question. Does he remain a Republican, or does it become the Trump party or whatever they call it? These are dicey times here, folks. Thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Hey, trivia question. I learned this last night. What are the only two animals that kill for sport? In other words, they don't kill to eat. They're not killing to survive. They kill for sport. There are only two animals. According to it's the house cat and leopards. The only two animals that kill for sport. I saw it last night. I had to rescue a little gecko. My cat, Allie, was going nuts on the coffee table in front of me. And I thought it just because she missed me because I was gone for a week. And my attention had been distracted enough. I looked, and there's this little baby gecko running around, and she's just toying with it. So I ran in there, and I grabbed some toilet tissue, and I rescued the gecko, and I took the thing outside and dropped it. Because they're our buddies, they eat insects. And when I came back in, Allie was still looking for it. Didn't have the sense to know that I had stolen it right out from under her eyes. J.J. Watt, number 99. Perhaps the greatest defensive player on the line, anyway, in the NFL, started a fundraising effort, plays for the Houston Texans, and his fundraising effort has surpassed $1.5 million. Started this thing on Sunday, I believe, and he found a website where you can do this, and he shut the website down within minutes of it going live, because the website had not had this kind of traffic before. Just gobs and gobs of money are pouring in charitably to various fundraising efforts in Houston, and they're going to need it. Congratulations to J.J. Watt. Yeah, Matt in Wichita, you're next. I have about a little over a minute, but I wanted to get you on. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you. Pleasure to talk with you.
Same here. Thanks.
Calling from one of those Android phones, so if I'm being hacked, we may be listened upon right now. So
you're fine. You're cool.
So I was calling about the Trump. You touched on that just a moment ago about Trump maybe not running as a Republican. So what are his options? Because if he runs as an independent and he takes seats, in the Congress and the Senate away from traditional establishment Republicans, if he were to encourage other people to run against them, how does he gain any more support than he has now, which is very little?
Well, that's the thing.
Inside his own party.
That's the ultimate question. There isn't enough time to put together. If he does form, for example, say a new independent party or whatever, to get members of Congress elected from that party in sufficient numbers to help him, that's all true. But something's going to have to give. If the Republican Party essentially joins with the Democrats to stop a Republican president, what does that do to the Republican Party? It's what these people are not thinking about, or maybe they are. I don't know. We should tackle that in greater detail tomorrow. Send me a note. Remind me. We're out of time here. I'll be back to wrap it up right after this. Okay, here it comes. I got a friend in Wyoming who flashed me a message that's not true. We got wolves out here that kill for sport. Okay. Well, I saw it on TV. It has to be. I saw it on Adam Baldwin's show, The Last Ship. It has to be true, because I saw it on TV. Hope you have a great rest of the day, folks. We'll be back here tomorrow, revved and ready to go.